We've all heard of Paddy Pimblett and his acts that have made him even more well-known among UFC fans. Now, this is someone who can't stay away from the media spotlight for long. From a controversial win to weight gain to his beef with McGregor, Pimblett has been in the UFC headlines more often than not. For those of you who don't know, we're going to talk about why he's a controversial fighter. First off, the UFC president is concerned about his weight gain. Dana White finally issued a statement about Paddy Pimblett's weight gain after a fight, and it's safe to say that the UFC boss doesn't like it. Pimblett has a reputation for putting on weight after a fight, and he recently said that he's reached 200 pounds just a few weeks after beating Jordan Levitt at UFC London. The UFC boss is worried about how the baddie is taking care of his body in between fights, but he says he won't step in or try to get the 27-year-old to keep his weight down. Pimblett recently said that he wants to fight in Las Vegas in December, and White's happy to make that happen, but he'd like to be able to book one of his best prospects without having to tell him months in advance. White said that they have to be very specific when planning fights for him because he's nowhere near weight and they don't want to put that much pressure on him to lose that much weight in that short amount of time. Since joining the UFC in 2021, Pimblett has won 3 fights by stoppage. He's gained a huge number of new fans and is almost a superstar. He says that his weight will stop going up and down when he's a little bit older and has better competition. That will make White very happy since he has big plans for his new UK star. Next up, we have fans concerned about his immense weight gain after UFC London. After going live about his prediction for the Marlon Vera vs. Dominic Cruz fight, Pimblett got the attention of many fans regarding his weight gain. Even though Pimblett's prediction was interesting, fans were more interested in the fact that the Liverpudlian seemed to have gained weight. As soon as the video went live, fans jumped into the comments to talk about how much weight Pimblett had gained, which most of them found funny. Many people were impressed by Pimblett's ability to quickly gain a lot of weight. One user even asked when he would make his debut as a heavyweight. Paddy Pimblett has talked about how much he likes junk food, and he's even said that he doesn't care about staying in shape when he's not in fight camp. The lightweight star usually fights at 155 pounds, but when he was with Cage Warriors, he also fought at 145 pounds. But during an appearance on ESPN MMA's The DC and RC show last month, the baddie said that he's been as heavy as 205 pounds. Although this is very surprising for most of us, Pimblett has still managed to maintain his weight when there's an upcoming fight. He's proved to us time and time again that he's capable of bringing his weight down and competing in upcoming matches. Despite the weight gain, he intends to return again to the ring soon. Now, let's talk about his controversial victory over Jared Gordon. After his controversial win over Jared Gordon, Paddy Pimblett has been told that he doesn't belong in the UFC. This month, the Brit went to Las Vegas's T-Mobile Arena for his first pay-per-view fight. He fought the experienced Gordon in the co-main event of UFC 282. After a terrible fight week in which he made a number of PR mistakes that hurt his popularity with fans, he stumbled his way to a decision to win the fight itself. Many other fighters and fans have called the fight a robbery, saying that Gordon did enough to win the first and third rounds and that he might have even won the second. And UFC lightweight fighter Bobby Green, who's a huge fan favorite, didn't think much of Pimblett. Green told Eurosport that Paddy would never fight the Scouse fighter after seeing him beat Gordon. He said that Paddy doesn't have enough skills to fight him. He also said that putting Paddy in there with him would be disrespectful because he'd get rid of Paddy quickly since he doesn't belong there and is an amateur. Moving on, do you know that Paddy Pimblett has been criticized a lot by both fighters and reporters? Pimblett used to be the champion of Cage Warriors. He's fought professionally 23 times, winning 20 of those fights and losing only 3. But even though he finished 3 of his first 4 fights in the first 2 rounds, he hasn't set the UFC on fire yet. And people like Green aren't impressed with his skills. But the American would fight Pimblett if given the chance, even though he thinks it wouldn't help his reputation as a fighter. He said that he'd still accept the offer since it's easy money for him and he would just do it for the heck of it. Since he joined the UFC in September of last year and knocked out Luigi Vendramini, Pimblett has made small steps forward. After he beat his first 2 opponents, they were quickly kicked out of the promotion. However, his last 2 opponents, Gordon and Jordan Levitt, are still there. Pimblett has also had some beef with reporters such as journalist Ariel Helwani. The dispute started when he appeared in an interview for Helwani, but he didn't pay him the fee. The fight then escalated when Pimblett took to name-calling to show his anger over this. He was criticized by fans for this beef as well. Coming up next, the baddie has never really beaten a high-end UFC-level fighter. Our star may be a baddie in name only, because he has never won against a high-level fighter. Paddy Pimblett should be on the UFC's roster because of his track record, his charm, and his ability to talk talk on the mic. But even though the baddie's record of 16-3 looks good on paper, he hasn't really shown what he can do against a high-level UFC fighter. So far in his career, Paddy Pimblett has only fought 3 UFC veterans: Cameron Else, Nad Narimani, and Julian Erosa. Even though he beat Erosa easily, which was probably the best match of his career, he lost to Else and Narimani. At this point, it's probably okay to forget about the loss to Else, since it happened when Pimblett was only 19 years old. But the fact is that, despite all the hype, he still hasn't shown much against top-level opponents. You could say the same thing about Conor McGregor or Khamzat Chimaev before they fought in the UFC for the first time. Neither man had ever fought or even won against a UFC veteran, but they showed right away that they belonged in the big leagues. But Pimblett might not follow in their footsteps. Instead, he might be more like Wagner Prado, Papi Abedi, or Konstantin Irokin, who were also thought to be very good prospects. All 3 of these fighters came to the UFC with a lot of hype and impressive records, but they just couldn't beat top-level opponents. Right now, it's not clear where Paddy Pimblett will end up, but since he hasn't done anything yet, it's hard to say that he'll follow in McGregor's footsteps. Following that, we have Pimblett's struggle with strong wrestlers. Pimblett's main style of fighting is grappling, but he's happy to fight on his feet if he has to. But the main thing that sets him apart from most of his peers is that he's very aggressive and hyperactive. When he's in the cage, the baddie never stops attacking, which has helped him win many of his biggest fights. So far, only 4 of his 16 wins have gone the full distance. The other 12 were won by submission or knockout. But based on what we've seen of him in Cage Warriors, Pimblett's takedown defense and wrestling are his biggest weaknesses. The baddie is a great grappler when it comes to submitting his opponent, so anyone who takes him to the ground needs to be careful. But in his losses to Nad Narimani and Soren Bak, the Liverpool native had a worrying tendency to end up on the bottom, unable to get his offense going. The best wrestlers have always been part of the biggest mixed martial arts events in the world. Mark Madsen, a former Olympian, and Gregor Gillespie, a legendary former NCAA Division I champion, are just 2 of the best fighters in the lightweight division of the UFC. Both of these men aren't in the top 5 in the division right now, which means that Paddy Pimblett would have to beat them to get to the top. And based on what we've seen so far, we can't say for sure that he can do that. Finally, Paddy Pimblett competes in one of the UFC's most loaded divisions. Paddy Pimblett may not be able to get to the top of the UFC because he fights in the lightweight division, which is one of the most competitive in the organization. The UFC's 155-pound division has always had a lot of very skilled fighters, and the current scene is no different. UFC lightweight champion Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, and Islam Makhachev are among the top fighters in the division right now. But while the top 10 fighters in every division are dangerous, the UFC's 155-pound roster also has some great fighters who aren't in the top 10. Clay Guida and Jim Miller are veterans, and Mateusz Gamrot, Grant Dawson, and Damir Ismagulov are hot prospects. Basically, there are no easy fights at lightweight, and the same could be said if Pimblett went down to 145 pounds, since the UFC featherweight division is almost as strong. If Paddy Pimblett wants to get to the top of the UFC, he'll have to fight his way through a row of very dangerous opponents, who all want to get there just as much as he does. Even a fighter as skilled as the baddie would have a hard time doing it. That's all for this video. Are you a fan of Pimblett, or do you think that he's not fit to be a UFC contender? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more exciting content in the future. Thanks for watching. See you next time.